This audio is going to be on spiritual specialness. So before we get into spiritual specialness, let's look at how the course describes specialness itself. Most of these are going to come from chapter 24. The title of that is The Goal of Specialness, so it makes sense that most of these quotes will be from the chapter on that goal. Specialness is the seal of treachery upon the gift of love. What is specialness but an attack upon the will of God? Specialness always makes comparisons. Pursuit of specialness is always at the cost of peace. Specialness is the idea of sin made real. And the demand for specialness and the perception of the giving of specialness as an act of love would make love hateful. That one is from chapter 16. Couple more. Only the special could have enemies, for they are different and not the same. And differences of any kind imposes orders of reality and a need to judge that cannot be escaped. Specialness is the great dictator of the wrong decisions. Here is the grand illusion of what you are and what your brother is. You are his enemy in specialness, his friend in a shared purpose. Specialness can never share, for it depends on goals that you alone can reach. The fear of God and of your brother comes from each unrecognized belief in specialness. In closing on the issue of specialness, which clearly is not a good thing, there's a very quotable paragraph in the course on what happens when you let your specialness take the lead. You'll walk in danger, intent in the dark forest of the sightless, unlit but by the shifting tiny gleams that spark an instant from the fireflies of sin, and then go out to lead the other to a nameless precipice and hurl him over it. For what can specialness delight in but to kill? What does it seek for but the sight of death? Where does it lead but to destruction? Yet think not that it looked upon your brother first, nor hated him before it hated you. The sin its eyes behold in him and love to look upon, it saw in you and looks on still with joy. Yet is it joy to look upon decay and madness, and believe this crumbling thing, with flesh already loosened from the bone and sightless holes for eyes, is like yourself. That's one of those stark, horrifying, terrifying parts about how we're leading our lives in bodies. So we're looking at specialness not to terrify ourselves or to condemn ourselves or anyone else for embracing our specialness, just to dispel it, because we're not going to be able to dispel it if we won't even look at it. And we're not going to look at it if we're too afraid of it. And that fear is actually a defense and a recognition that on some level we know that if we look at it, we'll reject it. If we look at it without judgment, we'll dispel it. And we will remember who and what we really are and God is, and experience ourselves at home. So it's all very purposive, and we didn't make a mistake in choosing specialness. We chose all the ugliness of it. And that's the part we don't want to take responsibility for. So spiritual specialness is the ego's attempt to drag God into the nightmare. If we can get others to see us as spiritually special, then God himself will have to recognize it. And that's how we pull him down to our level. I don't want to rise up to your level. I want you to come down here, witness how special I am, and approve of it and recognize me. All of that is nothingness in a form that seems like something, which is just like everything else in the nightmare. It's all nothingness in a form that seems like something. So let's say I have an experience of something other than the ego thought system. My ego takes that experience and glorifies itself. It spreads its, quote, special message and encourages the belief that it's tied to a specific body. A Course in Miracles students can fall into the trap of spiritual specialness, but so can any student on any path, any religion, any spiritual journey. The idea that only one path is the truth generally results in some version of persecuting others. And that persecution can take the form of just making others wrong. So when we talk about throwing a brother off a precipice as part of our specialness, murder isn't just physical. We murder each other and cannibalize each other psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually. So the way out of spiritual specialness, and let's say you find yourself kind of falling into the trap and feeling special. I have a special path. I've had special experiences. Other people are different from me. Because the major message of specialness is I'm different from you. You're different from me. Whether or not you think it's better or worse is almost beside the point. It's the requirement in the ego thought system to see a difference. So you start with awareness that you see specialness in yourself or someone else. We'll focus on the spiritual for the purpose here, because it can be particularly in the world stream very powerful to talk about spiritual specialness. We don't try to fix it or we don't condemn it. We look, wait, and quietly do nothing with Jesus or our inner guide. So if we have the truth, a representative of the truth, with us, looking, waiting, and quietly doing nothing, that is the practice of the Course. The dream can't be fixed because the script is set. So we always have to remember our function is forgiveness. My one responsibility is to accept the atonement for myself or the undoing of the dream, of the nightmare, of the bad decision. And that involves looking, waiting, and quietly doing nothing. The ego will always counsel you to do something right away, if possible. There's always a sense of urgency. Something's terribly wrong, and you have to scramble to try to fix it. And then you have to do the same thing again 5 minutes later when a new issue pops up. And that's how we spend our lives, putting out the little fires that come up. Well, the practice of forgiveness is the opposite of that. It's a recognition that you need do nothing, but it's also on another level, a recognition that you can't. Real choice does not happen here in the dream. It happens somewhere else. It doesn't happen where we believe it is. So worldly teachers can be really helpful, but they are not what they represent. And I think the spiritual specialness is a mixing up of possibly a worldly teacher who is holding themselves out as what they are representing. Maybe they say, I only experience God's love. I am a reflection of the Holy Spirit. Yes, that's the goal. And it might be true. That could be true, but it's not meaningful or helpful generally to students. And it just is unnecessary, because if you're practicing your path, whatever it may be, and you are experiencing yourself as the reflection of God's love, then you, without saying a word, point beyond yourself for the student. Point beyond yourself to what the body's representing here. So if you embody a reflection of love, you don't have to say anything. Those who are to recognize it will recognize it. Those who aren't won't. We're all in the same boat in the world. So if you try to see anyone as ahead of you or behind you, we'll lose the way. We all walk side by side. We're on the same path, not in form. God is the goal of the journey. Appearances can be very deceiving. And the Course says appearances deceive the mind that is content to be deceived. Meaning we can acknowledge differences in form without condemning those differences or without applauding those differences. We're choosing to condemn or applaud them. So we can prove to ourselves that we're not deceived by appearances if we can look upon them, note them, and acknowledge them without having a visceral reaction towards them. If a figure in a dream seems to behave badly, even seems evil and unforgiving, that is an appearance designed to prevent us from awakening, because we're supposed to get so caught up in what we see that we can't but condemn them. And of course, the more heinous the act, the harder it is to consider it just an appearance. So a primary example would be the Holocaust. There's a line in the Course that I think sums up the entire process that happens when we come across a worldly evil that is so grand that it cannot be ignored, that it is universally condemned. And the Course says, the more gruesome the image that passes before your mind's eye, the stronger your defenses seem to be to the will of God or to God's love. So I'm paraphrasing there. And I think we all can understand how that plays out in that dynamic. If you see just what I guess the best word to use is evil in the world, crimes and murder and horrible things being done. Yes, it does in that moment seem to be. I can't just look at it and call it nothing. It seems like if someone were to say, in response to the evil that we've judged in the world, well, there's no world, just go into your right mind and look at it with Jesus, that would be a cruelty. So it's really reversed here in the sense that our defenses seem very strong in the face of certain horrific images. In moving up the ladder, we would start with, I see a person commit an act in the world. I hate that person and condemn them. That person is responsible for my loss of peace. And then we would turn to Jesus or the presence in our mind that represents the truth and have it remind our minds that cause and effect is reversed in this world and raise a question about the true cause of my loss of peace. We need a question raised or we're just going to be spinning our wheels here. So I look upon what seems to be happening with Jesus, for engaging in forgiveness, as looking and waiting, quietly doing nothing. This does not change appearances at all. The part of my mind that observes is observing with Jesus. It's impossible to tell if anyone around you is doing this. A person could seem unloving in the world's terms, but be practicing the course. You could seem unloving in the world's terms, but be practicing the course. So again, judgment's not possible. And we don't seek to fix the dream. That dictate involves the level of the mind. Your body could seem to be doing anything at all. It's not even important. Where your investment lies will be revealed to you. If you're invested in the form of the outcome, you have learned a dark lesson and you look at that investment with Jesus, looking, waiting, quietly doing nothing. So it's the same activity as far as our function. It never changes. Sometimes we're looking at something that happened. Sometimes we're looking at the reaction to something that happened or our investment in what happened. But it's all the same. And that's why it's a simple course. If we just do as he says, so it's not possible to judge ourselves or other people. Our only role is to take the hand of Jesus and look. So as we follow those simple steps of asking for help and looking with Jesus, we're simultaneously letting go of our judgments, because every time we do it, we have raised a question about what we have established the truth to be. So it might seem like we're letting go of judgments about ourselves and the world, but those are not the problem. They are the symptom. So what's happening in the world is a smoke screen hiding our secret judgment and our secret hatred. And the dream will be undone where it began. The effect of the secret dream is the part we now see in nightmares. So our lives are the part that we see. And that is the second part of the dream. The first part of the dream is what's in our mind. The hatred of God and the belief he's going to destroy us before the projection. Now, the way we talk about it is it all happened simultaneously. The decision maker chose separation, the ego happened, and then we projected out a world. But we can talk about it in terms of one following the other, because Jesus talks about a ladder leading us back. He says, take not one step in the descent to hell, because you won't recognize the rest for what they are, and they will follow. We have to start where we are. We're a body in the world, and I want to know God. I have a deep and burning desire for God that seems to be blocked by the defenses I've put in place to block the memory of him. And I need to take steps. So the Course says, live so as to demonstrate you're not an ego. It could also read, live so as to demonstrate you're not special. This has nothing at all to do with others or how it looks like you relate to them, disagree with them, hate them, or love them. The only one to demonstrate that you're not an ego to is you. The only one I need to demonstrate I'm not an ego to is me. There is no way to demonstrate it for anybody else. It's impossible for all the reasons we just talked about. So that's a good thing to keep in mind moving forward. If you can move through the world demonstrating to you, I am not an ego, then you'll experience that lightening up and that that reflection of peace that comes with the recognition that you're not an ego. So to demonstrate you're not an ego is its own gift. It's not something you're trying to do to get something. When you demonstrate to yourself you're not an ego, that is the gift. That is the reflection. So the image that passes before the mind's eye is divorced from the experience of the self. The image has nothing to do with the experience at all, but in the world it appears as though cause in the experience, the world appears as a cause and the experience seems to be the effect. So if we're to have any peace of mind at all, that's what needs to be undone. Divorcing that idea that I feel bad and it's the cause of something outside of me. So when I want to demonstrate to myself that I'm not an ego, then I remember as best I can that the world is not cause of what I do or how I feel or what I think. The world can't go into my mind and make decisions for me. So we're vigilant for God in His kingdom, and we try to be vigilant for God in His kingdom. And remember, the Course occurs within the ego thought system. It's where it has to be because that's where it meets us. It meets us where we are. As we move through it, we are releasing the tightness with which we hold on to or cling to our ego. The Course says very clearly that the transfer of learning will occur regardless of what you think or believe. The ego thought system will be loosened by just practicing the Course, doing the workbook. So I'd like to think about it like a computer program. If you download a foreign program, it could alter absolutely everything. Everything that was in your computer could be adjusted by that new program. And this Course is like putting a new program into your mind that can't be undone once it's in there. It's not a perfect metaphor, but I think that Course students who just feel that their way is decided, that this is what their path is, and this is what their calling is, can probably experience or probably have some kind of experience like that. Like you just find yourself thinking about the Course without any intention. And in the end, when we reach the end of the journey, when we make our way up the ladder, when the memory of God dawns on our minds, the Course says the witnesses will come to prove you never slept. And I'm going to end with that because I think it's a really beautiful expression of the fact that you were never powerless. You always decided and ultimately found yourself at home. Thanks for listening.